Hey guys, welcome back. It's Josh with the Financial Advisor Car Guy. So this week I'm going to share some good news and some bad news with you, and we're going to go ahead and dive right into the bad news first. I'm going to cut to the chase. Chevrolet just announced that the V8 is dying. They are no longer going to use it in their Chevy Camaro. Not far behind is Dodge, who coincidentally earlier, I think it was late last week or earlier this week, announced that they have built the fastest production V8 Challenger in history. It runs the quarter mile in like 8.9 seconds at 166 miles an hour or something ridiculous. 0 to 60 in like a minute, or I'm sorry, 1.7 seconds. Crazy, just absolutely crazy. It's the new Demon Red-Eye 170 or something like that, but it's a fantastic car for what it is. But that's going to be the final farewell edition of the Challenger. It's going to be the final V8. And again, that Camaro has gone away. They're not going to produce it anymore. They're not going to limit it to a V6. They're not going to do anything with it. They're literally just terminating production. And so I'm going to follow that bad news up with the good news. That means the only V8 left in a compact sports car is going to be the Mustang. From a domestic standpoint. Now there's going to still be international cars where V8s are still irrelevant. But that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. So hang in there. But basically the quick gist of it is, over the life of a V8, auto manufacturers thought, you know what, we can go bigger, we can go better. And so pretty soon you started seeing V10s. Think of like the Dodge Viper. Think of different, Italian supercars. A lot of them had V10s in them for quite some time. Then you go to the big dogs that have V12s, right? Think, Lamborghini Diablo SV. Think of Ferrari Enzo. Think of, whatever. There's a lot of these cars that have V12s in them. And I mean, even Mercedes, they were putting them in the SL cars. V12s are huge, massive engines that can produce a lot of power, but they're big and they're heavy. And so I think from the standpoint of, weight distribution and just pure performance, you can get a lot of horsepower, but you're putting a huge package, a big heavy package in these cars. And so when you start putting them into mid-engine or rear-engine platforms, your weight distribution is all funky, right? So I think from an engineering standpoint, it made more sense for these guys to go back to V8s. And many of these manufacturers turbocharge or supercharge their V8s. So again, using Dodge as our example, they're supercharging these V8s to get 1,000 horsepower. Crazy power. I think of like the Ferrari F40. That's a turboed V8, right? I mean, it's not a V10, not a V12. They took a V8 and turbocharged it and got a ton of power. It was very fast, very noisy, just a fantastic car all around, but they're utilizing a V8. So then you circle back to, I would call it like an entry-level sports car, right? Mustang, Camaro, those are the first two that come to mind literally 99 times out of 100. And they've had V8s in them since the 60s, right? I mean, we're talking 50, 60 years almost of V8s in these cars. And now Chevy's come out and said, yeah, we're not going to do it anymore. We're going to start to see more and more of that. I mean, again, Dodge said the same thing. Ford, it's probably coming, right? I mean, I can't imagine they're going to continue to put V8s in these cars forever, especially if their competition's not. Why should they, or why do they need to? They might squeeze a few more years out and say, hey, we're top dog in this particular arena. We're the only guys doing it. If you want a domestic sports car with a V8, come get a Ford, right? So that's a cool thing, especially as a Ford guy myself. I love to see that. I have 3 V8s in my garage, right? I've got this thing. I've also got my R8. I also have my Ford Raptor, 2 of which are Fords, right? The Mustang and the Raptor. And then we have an electric car, right? So I don't have a V6. The Eclipse that we have, my daughter's car, it is a little 4-cylinder, but it's turbocharged. And I think what we're going to start to see is a lot of these V8 manufacturers, whether they discontinue the line or not, right? So the Camaro is going away. Challenger going away as a V8. We don't know if they're going to reintroduce a Challenger later on as a hybrid. Maybe it's pure electric. I know they've kind of not joked, but they've kind of insinuated that might be the future. I know there was a concept car circulating for a while there it was Challenger body and really pretty looking car, really nice lines. but it was bone silent until they put an aftermarket exhaust on there, which is just audio, right? I mean, there's no real exhaust. There's literally zero emissions. So they plumb it to look like an exhaust system, but they put a speaker on the end of it so you hear exhaust. Some of that's controlled from inside the cabin, but I mean, that's not it. So V8s, right? What we're gonna start to see, I think, is V8s going away, probably going down to V6 engine platforms, because again, you can get kind of a more compact package, a little lighter weight, and you can still turbocharge a V6, right? I mean, I think of my wife's old BMW. We had a 535. It was a fantastic car. It was a straight six, but it had twin turbo on it. And that thing was fast. It was very fast. And I mean, all that to say, it's a fairly compact package. They're not super heavy. So again, you can get that weight distribution really, really easy. We're starting to see more exotics carry V6 hybrid type of approaches. Brand new Ferraris. I want to say it's the 296 or 298 or something like that. The new car. The Ferrari's got a V6 in there, and it does have a hybrid component. So I don't know if it's electric, 2-axle, or rear end is gas and the front's not exactly sure. Probably should have researched that before I threw that in here. But that car has a V6 hybrid drivetrain. So that's not new. That's been a thing. And I definitely think that's probably where it's going to go moving forward, because they're saving so much weight and they can get these cars lighter and faster. And sure, if you've got 1,000 horsepower supercharged V8 in this Dodge Challenger, and it can run a quarter mile in under 9 seconds out of the box, that's pretty ridiculous. It's also got a $100,000 price tag. So, not that that's crazy for the performance. It's actually pretty cheap for the performance, because you've got to figure, if you're buying a Ferrari, you're buying a Lamborghini, you're buying a McLaren, you're buying a Mercedes, whatever you're buying, if you want to have a sub 10-second car, you're likely going to spend a lot more than just $100,000. So dollar per horsepower, it's actually quite a steal. Literally, it's like 10 cents a horsepower, which is crazy. And I mean, is that right math? 100,000, 1,000 horsepower. So you do the math, right? What is that? Carry the zero. Yeah, it's inexpensive horsepower. And so, all that to say, is there a 500 horsepower car that's $50,000? That'd be the equivalent. 250 horsepower car for $25,000. Those are out there. They do exist. But once you start getting into these bigger engines, bigger power, the price is like a bell curve, right? It goes up and then kind of plateaus and then comes crashing down during depreciation stages. And so the higher the horsepower out of the factory door, the higher the price tag, right? Exponentially. It's not necessarily a straight line. It's kind of a curve. And so it does get more expensive. Anyway, I say all that to share with you that V8s are alive and well in some platforms. There's still going to be V8 trucks, right? There's still going to be V8 SUVs. There's still going to be some V8 cars. But in the sports car arena, I think they're going away. I think that Ford is going to be the last to hold on, which again, personally, I love that. That's very cool. But from an enthusiast standpoint, it's really disappointing. It does make V12 cars, it does make V10 cars, and it does make current V8 cars all the more desirable. So what that means is moving forward, we're going to start to see, I think, that bell curve kind of change. I don't think V8 cars, V8 Camaros today, Camaros in general today, might hold their value better knowing that they're going away and knowing that they're not going to come back. Chevy has been very transparent. They're not bringing the Camaro back, especially in an internal combustion platform. Could come back as a hybrid. They just came out with the Corvette Stingray, the hybrid version of that. And it's got the C8 body. It's fantastic. It's got nearly as much power as the Z06 in a hybrid platform. I think that's the way car manufacturers are going to go, at least until they're told otherwise. And sure, we could go political and do all that. I'm not going to go down that path. But my point is, I just think that V8s are not going to be as readily available, much like V10s and V12s anymore, right? They've just started to go away. Manufacturers aren't using them. There's a rhyme and reason to all these decisions that are being made, but at the same time, it comes down to personal preference. There are people out there that are shopping for a V12 Mercedes. There are people out there shopping for a V10 Ferrari or whatever. And so, again, all that to say, you got to find what's your personal preference and what's most desirable to you and hang on to it, right? I mean, V12 R8s, they're going away after this year. V10 R8s. They haven't made V8 ones since 2014, I think. And even then, most of them were V10s at that point because they'd sort of slowly transitioned out. And the Gen 2, they never even put a V8 in it. So, mine's a Gen 1. It does have the V8. But all that to say, they're not going to produce R8s again after 2023. So any R8 is going to probably hold its value, if not maybe appreciate some over time. They're also, I think, in my probably biased opinion, but I think the first gen cars are better looking. I think they look less Lambo-ish. I think the Gen 2s kind of mirrored their sister car, the Huracan. And so to me, I think there's too many similarities there. Then it really is kind of like the poor man's Lambo. And I've never liked that saying. I've never thought that about my car. I think my car is very different than like a Gallardo, which is its sister platform. But the Gallardo is still a six-figure car. I mean, a really beat up one with high miles and a salvage title's still, 80 or 90 grand. Clean titled starts at 100,000 and goes up. And they've been that way for a long time. I think they sort of bottomed out at 95,000, give or take a few, and have since gone back up through the crazy car market of 22, which we talked about last week. Last year was a crazy car market. This year, we're actually starting to see these prices kind of bottom out and maybe even head back a little bit too. And I think that those more desirable engine platforms are going to kind of head back up faster. I do think V10s, V12s, and then naturally aspirated V8s, people are going to want them, especially if they're not really available anymore. So that's what I got for you guys. What are your thoughts? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Is there a V8 car you've got to own? Have you ever had a V10 or a V12? Let me know in the comments. Share, like this stuff. Please come back for next week. I've got a bigger update for you guys. Hopefully we get this thing back on the road. We're like this close. So if it's not next week, it's the following. So stay tuned. But most importantly, remember, may every investment you make be a good one. Till next time.